You're a ranger at the Rosie the Riveter National Park. It's focused on World War II. You yourself graduated from Castlemont High in Oakland in 1942. What did you do after that during the 1940s?
Well, among the things that I did do was to work at a Union Hall during World War II in Richmond, associated with the Kaiser shipyards.
And it was still segregated at the time.
Yes, at that time. That would have been before the labor movement would be racially integrated. So that I worked in an auxiliary, which was created by the unions. Auxiliary was just a fine word for Jim Crow. All of the black workers were put in those unions, and they paid dues, but they had no power, no vote.
And the image of Rosie the Riveter in denim, you know, with the muscle flex, welding ships, doing defense work, it was always the image of a white woman. Did you identify that with that image?
No, I never did, because I never did see a ship under construction. I never did see a ship being launched.
You weren't allowed to?
The Union Hall where I worked was in the center of the city, nowhere near the shoreline. So that whole part of the Homefront story escaped me at the time.
And so why did you decide to become a park ranger at the age of 85? Because that was not your story.
Yeah, I never did really decide. I came into Richmond as a field representative for a member of the California State Assembly, for Dion Arner. And as such, the park bloomed into my district. And I began to attend those first planning meetings because it was something that was occurring in the 14th Assembly District, and gradually became involved in that planning operation.
And you became involved for a reason. I mean, you spoke up and said, look, there are nuances to this story.
Because
this was not my story.
The reason that Richmond had been selected was because though there were boom towns that grew up around the country, it was only here in Richmond that there were enough still standing structures through which to interpret that history. And but the structures that would have told my story, the African American story, had been long ago torn down. So that in order to see that history was more inclusive, there was more than the story of Rosie the River, the white woman's story. There was a story of 120,000 Japanese Americans being interned. There was a story of the Port Chicago explosion where there were 320 lives lost. There was a story of African Americans who had come out of the sharecroppers, come out of the South, the 5 southern states to answer the call for workers. Those stories were going untold. And in order to see that history was inclusive, I became a part of the planning operation.
You grew up in the Bay Area in the 1940s and 50s. What was life like here? What happened when you tried to build a house in Berkeley?
Well, I grew up as a second-generation Californian, not as an African American. I grew up when there were 10,000 African Americans between Seaside and Sacramento, so there were not segregation was not formal as it is in the South. So I didn't grow up with that kind of stigma at all. I learned after the migration of so many African Americans out of the South that this was an unreal aspect of my life. It was something that simply we had to grow into.
Yeah. Well, there was some redlining, right? That happened when you tried to buy a house in Berkeley, and then you decided to move to Walnut Creek with your husband at the time.
We built a house in Walnut Creek. We built a house in an unincorporated area, thinking that would give us less problems, and then live with death threats for about 5 years.
You did, because you were an African-American family in the town.
Yes, because there were only 2 African-American families in all of the Diablo Valley, and we were one of them.
And during the Civil Rights era, you decided to become a bridge between liberal whites around Walnut Creek, around Diablo Valley, and the Black Panthers. What did you do during that time?
Participated in fundraising activities and delivered I was called a bag lady for the Black Panthers because I was
delivered the money in bags to
not literally
the Black Panthers?
Not literally, but that was a time of redefinition for me. And I had been in the suburbs as a white family and was put more in touch with my Black roots than I needed to be in the Bay Area. So that was a period of redefinition for me.
You have lived through so much. You are a national treasure. You were even honored with a presidential coin from President Barack Obama. Given the tumultuous political climate that we live in today, what is your view of race relations?
I think that there are new voices, exciting voices that are coming out of the Black movement now that are really exciting to me. Black Lives Matter and Ta-Nehisi Coates and Joy Reid. And there are many, many voices coming out now. I think that since I have lost my sense of future because I'm 96, my sense of past has been enhanced. And I am aware now that this country has been going through these cyclical periods of chaos ever since 1776, and we're in another one of them now. But it's in those times that the democracy is being redefined, and that we have access to the reset buttons, and that we're in one of those places right now. So that for me, it's very hopeful. It's very exciting because all those things that were very negative, that were very ugly, are now available to be seen by the entire nation when they used to be simply things that existed in the Black community. Now everyone sees them. We all saw Charlottesville.
Well, we are so lucky to have you and your perspective, and I wish you the best of luck with your new book.
Thank you very much.
Reid Soskin, thank you for
very
being
much.
here.